Today's skill is 5 NBT B7. It is multiplying decimal fractions by decimal fractions. I'm going to first start out with a problem. So I have 3/10 times 2 and 4/10. My first step to multiplying decimal fractions by decimal fractions is to identify the place value of my last most right digit. So for this number, it is 3/10. Already you can hear the fraction 3/10 times 2 and 4/10. Automatically, I know I am working with 4/10. However, I can't just forget about my 2 ones. One general rule is that we know that 1 whole is equal to 10/10, because 0 and 1/10 times 10 equals 1 whole. So 2 ones must be equal to 20/10. Now I have 3/10 times 24/10. As is always the case when you're multiplying fractions, you multiply out your numerators. So 3 times 24, I'm going to do it off to the side. I'm going to multiply my ones place first. 3 times 4 is 12. I carry my 1/10, then I move on to my tens place. 3/10 times 2/10 is 6/10 plus 1/10 is 7/10. So I get 72 over, I multiply out my denominators, which gives me 10 times 10, which is 100. 3/10 times 2 and 4/10 is equal to 72 hundredths. I can easily rewrite this now as a decimal, and I get 0 and 72 hundredths. My 2 lands in the hundredths place. I'm going to go ahead and, that was super weird. I'm going to go ahead and move to the right and try another problem. My next problem, I'm going to do another decimal fraction by a decimal fraction. Let's do 2 and 54 hundredths times 0 and 45 hundredths. Okay, so same thing. I identify the place value of my rightmost digit. So I'm working with the hundredths, 2 and 54 hundredths. I'm going to put that on top of my hundredths. Now, we can't just forget about this 2. So 2 ones is equal to 200 hundredths, because 100 over 100 is equal to 1 whole. So for 2 wholes, you would do 100 over 100 plus 100 over 100, and you would get 200 hundredths. So you have 254 hundredths. Now, my next step, 45 hundredths. I have nothing in my ones place, so I'm going to rewrite my number as a fraction, 45 hundredths. Now, I'm going to multiply out my numerator. Since my numbers are pretty big, I'm going to go ahead and do my area model off to the side. So 254, I see 3 digits, hundreds, tens, and ones. So I'm going to do the expanded form, 254, and then I'm going to do the expanded form of my second number, 45. I'm going to find all my partial products now. 200 times 40 is 8,000. 40 times 50 is 2,000. 40 times 4 is 160. 200 times 5 is 1,000. 5 times 50 is 250. 5 times 4 is 20. 8,000 plus 2,000. I'm going to move through my top row. 8,000 plus 2,000 is 10,000. 10,000 plus 160 is 10,160. Now, same thing. 1,000 plus 250 is 1,250. Plus 20 is 1,270. Notice how I've kept my numbers all lined up by place value. 0 plus 0 is 0. 6 plus 7 is 13. 1 plus 1 plus 2 is 4. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus nothing is 1. So I get 11,430. Let me go back. So my numerators multiply out to 11,140. Excuse me, wow, that was really silly. 11,430. And then my denominators, which I'm going to multiply out, I get 100 times 100, which is equal to 10,000. Remember, I did 1 times 1, and then I attached 4 zeros in front of my 1. Okay, so I am working with the 10,000ths place. 10,000ths place. So I find that the simplest way for kids to make sure that they can convert their answer into decimal form easily is by making a place value chart. So this is my 10,000ths, my thousandths, my hundredths, my tenths, and then my decimal point goes here, and then my ones. So I know, since I'm working with the 10,000ths place, my lastmost digit in my numerator is going to land there. And then I'm going to work from the left to the left. So then my 3 goes in the thousandths place, my 4 goes in the hundredths place, my 1 goes in the tenths place, and then my last one goes in the ones place. Since my rightmost digit has a 0 in front of it, I can just drop that 0 and rewrite this as 1 and 143 thousandths. This is my final answer, to 2 54 hundredths times 45 hundredths. Now I'm going to move on to my next problem. Twelve hundredths times 4 tenths. Immediately, I'm sure you're noticing that these are two different ways of representing a fraction. So you have 12 hundredths in fraction form and 4 tenths in decimal form. To make things simpler, we need to rewrite one of these numbers in the same exact format. Since we're working with decimal fractions, I'm going to go ahead and keep my one fraction and then convert my decimal into a fraction. As always, there is nothing in my ones place and I have 4 tenths. That place value is super helpful with identifying our fraction, our denominator. So 12 times 4, I'm once again multiplying out my numerator. I get 48. That is one of our fact families. You should know that. And then 100 times 10, I do 1 times 1, and I attach 3 zeros in front of it. My answer is 48 thousandths. So if you need to, you can always use a place value chart, or you can make your own. So I'm going to go ahead and make my own. So I have my ones place, tenths place, hundredths place, and then thousandths place. So since I'm working with the thousandths, my last digit in my numerator, my rightmost digit in the numerator, is going to land in the thousandths place, and then I'm going to move to the left. So I have a 4 in the hundredths place. Now you must be wondering, what happens to that tenths place? I'm just going to put a 0 down, because remember, if I have something in the thousandths and the hundredths, and I have nothing in the tenths, I have to put a 0 there to act as a placeholder, because 48 hundredths is greater than 48 thousandths. Okay? So if you forget that 0, you're getting a completely different number. So it's really important to remember that there is a 0 in the tenths place if you have 48 thousandths. So my final answer is 0 and 48 thousandths. So I'm going to go ahead and do one last problem. This problem I'm going to consider a bit of a challenge problem because you're no longer working with fractions in base 10. Immediately, when I'm looking at a problem like this, I'm noticing that my fraction is not in base 10. There is no 10, 100, 1,000 in that denominator. I just see 5, which is not a multiple of 10. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my number to the left, which is in decimal form, into fraction form. So as always, I have 1 and 23 hundredths. That hundredths tells me the last digit, the place value that I'm going to be working with. 3 is in the hundredths place, so I have 23 hundredths. And since I have a 1, I also have another 100 hundredths times 1/5. Now, the same rules for multiplying fractions continue to apply, regardless of whether or not your fractions are in base 10. So you're going to go ahead and multiply out your numerators. You're going to do 123 times 1, which is 123, over 5 times 100. 5 times 1 is 5, and then you go ahead and attach your 2 zeros. You get 123 over 500. Now, to rewrite this as a fraction, notice that 5 is a multiple of 10. So you could pretty easily convert your 500 into a base 10 number. You do this by doing some renaming. This is a skill that you've been working on for a very long time. I'm pretty sure you guys cover this skill in 3rd grade. So I'm going to think to myself, what is my next closest base 10 number to 500 that I could multiply to? I know that 5 times 2 is 10. So if I'm doing 500 times 2, I'd get 1,000. So I'm going to go ahead and rename my fraction here to the thousandths. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my renaming. 1,000 is my new denominator. Now, since I'm renaming, I'm going to go ahead and multiply my denominator by 2, and then since it's renaming and we want to make sure our value stays the same, and whatever I do to my denominator, I must do to my numerator. So I'm also going to multiply my numerator by 2. 123 times 2 is 246. 246 thousandths. I can go ahead and rename this pretty easily. 6 goes in the thousandths place, 4 goes in the hundredths place, 2 goes in the tenths place, and then before, to the left of the tenths place is the ones place, which I have nothing. So my final answer is 246 thousandths. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful, and I hope you guys succeed on whatever assessment it is that you're working on.